got to do what you love, but you got to find a trade. You got to do what you love, but be able to find a way to make ends meet. The most interesting people I know have not taken a linear path. As an artist, yes, you need to have some talent and creativity, but so much of the job of being an artist is the business side of it. If you're going to be difficult, there are 100 people waiting in line behind you to take your spot. You can make your work, but you can't make it in a vacuum, especially the current space that we're in. You really have to have a presence on social media. You need to put yourself out there.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of 23 Journeys, a network for creatives. I am your host, Thato Datsun, here with my lovely and beautiful wife, Naomi.
We're back again, guys.
All right. Today, we have an amazing guest. She's a talented artist. She works deep dives and goes to museum walls. Rebecca Rutstein turns science into stunning art. She's worked alongside oceanographers, geologists, molecular scientists to reveal the invisible forces of nature. And her work has been featured everywhere from ABC, the Wall Street Journal, and even the Washington Post. Her works are in the collection of the Philadelphia Art Museum. I'd like to introduce you all to Rebecca Rutstein.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We are happy to have you here today, and it's such a pleasure. You know, I found you on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, I hope she responds when I send her a message. And
I was psyched to hear from you. I always love hearing from people on social media, and it was great to get your message. And I think it's important to kind of appreciate that networking opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're all about. We're all here about networking, and just like something as simple as we've had a guest on before, and his famous line is "shoot your shot." And I was like, you know what? Let me just give it a shot. And, if she replies, great. If she doesn't, oh, well, at least I tried. And here we are. So
it's awesome to be here.
Rebecca's art is super cool. Huge murals. I mean, these art installations, all over. So you do acrylic painting, you do sculptures, and some of your work is even under the sea. So like what drew you to art, and like how did you like really explore this whole avenue?
Well, it's interesting. I always grew up kind of, as someone who was interested in creating and making art. It was something I always knew I wanted to do. However, I didn't think that it would necessarily be something that I could explore, in college, say. I didn't come from a family of artists, so it wasn't, again, something that I thought would be sort of a realistic or practical kind of pursuit. And it didn't occur to me that I could actually do this. And the time when I was applying to college, my dad was in the middle of a big kind of transition with his own work. And he went from practicing as an attorney to managing a minor league baseball team which had always been his dream. And so when I was applying to college, he was like, look, what do you love to do? And I'm like, well, I love to do art. And he's like, you got to do what you love. You got to do what you love, but you got to find a trade. You got to do what you love, but be able to find a way to make ends meet. And so sort of with his blessing, I decided to major in art and figure out a path, And so that was sort of the beginning. As far as sort of finding the path to working with scientists, that's a whole nother story, and we can get into that later.
Yeah, that's okay. That's totally cool, and that's awesome that your father encouraged you. We're parents.
Oh, that's awesome. So
we have two young. How many kids you have?
Teenagers, man. They're a lot right now. 16 and 18-year-old boys.
Oh, okay.
In fact, my son is now going to college. He's going in the fall, and he, of course, wants to do something creative. And my husband and I are encouraging him. But also, there's, it's a difficult place to enter into. But I think the rewards are incredible.
I like what your dad had mentioned too about follow what you love, but make sure you know how to make it work and all. So it's like still have that business mindset behind it, but how can you apply that business then into what it is that you're doing and make a love of what you're doing? So I like that.
Well, absolutely, because I think that, and I want to hear about your kids. I didn't forget about that. But I think that you're going to be much happier if you're doing something you love, but at the same time, there are the realities, and you have to figure it out. And it's not necessarily, I think I always say that like the most interesting people I know have not taken a linear path. I mean, it's like there's different avenues you can go down, but for me, I've really been grateful for that advice early on. Now, he wasn't going to support this, like, it was more of like an emotional like encouragement, but
Yeah.
he wasn't going to finance my, wanting to be an artist. I had to figure it out, but yeah, it was wonderful to have that sort of encouragement, because I do know a lot of artists whose parents were dead set against them pursuing art in college. They wanted them to do something more practical. So.
Yeah. Even emotional support is huge and all.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and that's why it's like, even with family members and all, it's you don't always have to support financially for people's trades. Eventually, it would be nice if you supported them financially, but just having that backbone and emotional support definitely helps. Like, a lot of people get their passions off the ground, even to begin with.
100%. Yeah, and again, like I didn't come from a family of artists, so I didn't even think it was like in the lexicon that I could go to college for art, but it was definitely my passion. So
That's awesome. And just so we can, since you asked about our kids,
Yeah.
we have 2 young girls,
Aw.
so 8 and 6, and they love dance and they love to draw, and they're very creative, and they watch mom and dad having the business, and even our oldest daughter has like watched us when we were working on branding for the podcast and everything. She's like, oh, I want to make my own show, and she
Oh, that's
picked out her
awesome.
colors and her designs and everything and such, and it's cool, and we encourage that growth. Like, hey, that's what you want to try.
Even last a couple nights ago, I had bought one of those walking treadmills and all, and it got shipped to our house. And I took the box apart, and as soon as I took the box off, they saw the styrofoam and they saw the box pieces, and they're like, "Oh, can I have that?" And they
Oh,
just
yeah.
went, and the one made like a sword holder out of the styrofoam. The other one was just making all different things out of the cardboard box. It was cool to see their brains just go off.
Oh yeah, a cardboard box. I mean, that's a gold mine.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we had like duct tape in a cardboard box that could keep our kids entertained for like
Yeah.
Yeah.
months.
We've gone through roll after roll of painter's tape of the kids putting stuff together, making clothes for their dolls and all this. So it's really cool. I like hearing stories of that, and it makes me know that I'm on the right path, directing my kids in that direction too.
I mean, it's so important. My sister joked with me that she's in she's in finance, and she's like, I would never let my kids have Legos because they made such a mess. And I'm like, yes, but Legos were like, I mean, that was like an institution in our house. I mean, the kids just like to build. They want to create, and we've just sort of give them tools. And both of the kids are really creative, as is my husband.
Yeah.
So.
And then your husband's an artist too?
He is. He would say he's not a practicing artist, but he also has a background in art. He's a master's in sculpture, and he is a really talented sculptor as well. And but also has worked in the trades, and he runs a fabrication lab. He works at the School of Design at Penn and helps to run the fabrication lab. So he works with lots of really cool tools to help the students build things, and he also has access to that as well. So yeah.
Awesome.
But again, finding a way to support yourself, like finding a trade. I did do other things for a long time before I started working full time as an artist, so we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a big thing. What I always tell people as an artist, it doesn't matter what you do, whether it's in music or in your case, fine art, more of the fine art sculpturing and such, is that you have to find a way to support it, because it's a snowball effect. It starts small, you do little jobs here and there, and then as the word spreads and more people get to know, like, oh, Rebecca's got these sculptures. Hey, sculptures. Okay, cool. Maybe we could do it here. Oh, wow, she's in this magazine. Okay, this person's credible. Now we'll actually like put money and purchase the product that she creates. And then like musicians, you put a song out. You're still maybe working at a diner or something, but you still got to support yourself along the way. And it's a business mindset you build, because it's not even just creating stuff to create. Obviously you as an artist, you're always thinking of different ideas. What's something creative that could really inspire and bring ideas? But like me as a photographer, I got to look at, okay, how can I use my skills to help other people with my service too? Businesses can use me, weddings, event coverages, and everything. And then, other things I got to think, how fast do I get the pictures back? So that business mind really plays into a factor to be an effective creative and make money.
100%. And it's such a good point. I mean, I think that like, my husband and I have joked that like, as an artist, yes, you need to have some talent and creativity, but so much of the job of being an artist is the business side of it. Sadly, not maybe not sadly, but just it's the reality. That like you can make your work, but you can't make it in a vacuum, especially in the current space that we're in. You really have to have a presence on social media. You need to put yourself out there, and you need to also have a mindset of like a flow. Where you're allowing things to kind of come to you too. Like I know people that have really struggled financially, and I'm always trying to sort of put out like a good positive energy, and oftentimes things come, with that mindset. I don't know if that sounds a little bit out there, but I feel like sort of really focusing on opportunities and being positive, and again, like the business side of things, and making sure that you have what you need to sort of pay the bills.
Yeah.
And also to ride out the ebbs in the business, which there are many. So
The ebbs and flows.
the ebbs and flows, I mean, that was like really tricky for a long time to figure out, especially with any time of economic downturn or, the pandemic. I mean, there's so many times when things kind of slow down, and especially in fine art. I mean, fine art, it's not commercial. It's like, it's a luxury item, and it's like the first thing to be dropped from somebody's budget.
Yeah.
So it's like you need to figure out how to sort of build a cushion for yourself,
True.
to ride out those slow times.
And putting out that positive thought too, and just staying positive, it makes a huge impact too, because the people that you're connecting with around you, they want to work with people that they like and that are positive too, usually, that they can get along with. So it's like if you're in a good mood, if you're positive, you're putting that out there, they're going to remember that and be like, oh, I want to work with her and all. It might not be like the first, like there might be a whole lot of artists out there, but they might remember you because of your attitude that day.
It is, I think it is really true. I mean, I really believe in the kind of energy you give out, and I myself, there's times when it's like, it's really hard and I'm not feeling grateful, but I every morning I try to sort of like just take a walk and think about what I'm grateful for, because I think it does sort of, it does help. Like it does. It's all connected. So
Cool. So we've talked about a little bit of art and whatnot. Why don't we shift a little bit to science? How did you shift over and start working with like, the scientists and creating these art pieces based off of like, the ocean and molecules and all that?
yeah, it's been a journey. I think that, in the beginning I was learning how to paint things the way they looked, and sort of trying to figure out, gaining skills, if you will. But one of the most important things as an artist is, beyond learning how to illustrate something, is to figure out what your voice is and what it is that you want to say with those skills. And so I was sort of looking for that. And in the meantime, when I was an undergrad, I had gone to a university where I took other classes, and I had taken a geology class, and was just really blown away by visiting these state parks in upstate New York and learning about these geologic forces that had caused these incredible formations. And so I think that sort of planted a seed for some sort of fascination with sort of the way the world works. But it wasn't something that I kind of got into right away. And it wasn't until many years later, even after grad school, I was still kind of, working and creating my work and moving into sort of an abstract language with my paintings, that I sort of came back to this idea of these forces underneath the surface creating kind of upheaval above. And it kind of resonated for me in my 20s as a metaphor for kind of interpersonal relationships and sort of all of this kind of friction that brews sometimes that then comes out. And I sort of started playing with it as a metaphor initially in my work, thinking about these sort of plate tectonic diagrams. And then I just became genuinely interested in wanting to learn more about the geology of different areas. And so in the early 2000s, I started going on residencies to places that were geologically interesting to me. And so I started trying to learn about geology. So I was in the Canadian Rockies, and then I was in Hawaii, and kind of creating these narratives inspired by the geology of these places. And it was in Hawaii where I came upon this map of the ocean floor. It was a sonar map, imaged through sound waves. And it was this, like, revealing this incredible topography that was hidden from view on the bottom of the ocean. And I was just like fascinated and riveted and wanted to go there. And literally started doing research. This is in 2005 to figure out how I could go down in a submersible to go down and see this for myself. And called up Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, which is in Massachusetts. They operate the only publicly operated submersible in the country. It's owned by the Navy. It's called Alvin. And I was like, hey, you know, I'm a young artist. I really want to go in Alvin. Like, how does an artist go in Alvin? And they were just sort of like, who are you? Like, you know, and that was, you know, totally justified. I maybe had no business, but at the same time, I was driven, I was motivated, and I was, you know, interested. And so I realized that I would have to work towards this, that it wasn't going to just be handed to me. And so I sort of tabled that dream, had my kids, a lot of stuff happened in between, but kind of kept that dream alive. And starting in about 10 years later, I guess it was, or maybe a little bit less than that, I was at my kids' preschool. And it's like, you never know when you're going to meet somebody that's going to, you know, have an impact on your life. But I was at my kids' preschool. There was another parent there who was a biologist. And I started talking to him, and we were at a barbecue and drinking beers. And I was like, you know, I've always dreamed of going down in Alvin. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, seriously. And I started talking to him about the bathymetry at the bottom of the ocean and these maps. And he realized that I was serious. And he's like, you know, if you want to do this, you know, you need to go on a ship first, you know, and see what it's like. You need to get out on a research vessel. So that was sort of the start of this kind of this journey. And in 2015, I was invited out on a research vessel for the first time. And so that was the first time I actually went out. I sailed from the Galapagos to San Diego for 3 weeks and worked with scientists who were mapping the ocean floor. It was an incredible experience. It totally changed my life. And from there, I would say that the whole kind of like flow of my creative journey shifted. And all of a sudden I was just, and I, at the time, I didn't even know if I would go. It was, my kids were young. It was a really big commitment. My husband said, you never know what might happen. Like, just go, you know? And that's another thing I think, just as a side note, is to find a partner that gets it. You know, not everybody gets creative people, you know, and not everybody will support the crazy, you know, adventures that might entail. And, you know, I was lucky to meet somebody who really understood and valued, you know, me being creative as a woman and as somebody that was going to go out to sea and potentially be away from home for periods of time. But he was totally on board, which was really awesome, and I'm super grateful for that. But anyway, that was like a very life-changing experience, being out on the ocean and having this experience. And so from there, opportunities started coming to me, and I was being invited to be doing other things with other scientists. Like, all of a sudden I became part of this network.
Oh,
you know?
nice.
So you said originally it was your kids' preschool, another parent and all that put that in your mind and all. So then how did you go about then getting into the research stuff? Did you just like kind of look out like research ships and all that you could be a part of? Like, how did that then spark that direction there?
Well, so I'd always been interested in science research. I'd been doing it on my own. I just hadn't worked directly with scientists. So I'd been doing this since like the early 2000s. But right, so when he said, you know, he suggested this one ship that was just starting to take out artists, but mainly what they called science communication fellows, so mainly people that were educators. But they wanted to bring people that were either writers or educators and maybe an artist out with the scientists to sort of work with them. And so I was invited to this one trip that I mentioned from the Galapagos to San Diego. And this was very new. Like, not a lot of artists were going out on research vessels. At the same time, Schmidt Ocean Institute, which is a nonprofit organization, had just started an Artists at Sea program where they're like literally bringing artists out onto the research vessels. But this was just happening in 2015, 2016. So somebody I met on the first ship, the Nautilus, called me up. They're like, hey, you should check out Schmidt Ocean Institute. They have these expeditions and they're inviting artists. I'm like, this is awesome. So I go onto the website to apply, and there's a video. It said, for applicants, it said inspiration. And I clicked on the video, and it's me on the other ship painting. And I was like, wait, I'm the inspiration? I'm like, so I quickly write them an email. I was like, hey, I'm featured on your website. Like, can I apply to this? They're like, please, you know. So I applied and ended up then sailing with them in 2016. I was in Tahiti, and then I sailed from Vietnam to Guam. And from there, I just started meeting scientists and artists along the way, but who then started writing me into their proposals that were funded by the National Science Foundation. So I started being invited out. It was like it was this network that just sort of grew. I think the oceanographic world is a pretty small network overall, and it just kind of like spiraled, and just like you said, it just sort of like one thing happened, and then all of a sudden there were instead of me seeking out opportunities, people were asking me to do things, which was like shocking, you know. But I think one of the things that happened, I'll just mention quickly, was after those 2 expeditions, I got contacted by someone who they were starting this project called the Ocean Memory Project, and it was a project that involved artists and scientists and people in the humanities kind of reframing the way we think about the ocean. And so they invited me to join this project, and from there I met a lot of the scientists that I'm working with now. And one of them, we went to this workshop in the Pacific Northwest, and the last night at dinner we're all celebrating, and I said to my colleague Mandy, like, I've always wanted to go in Alvin, and she just simply turned to me and said, "I'll take you." I was like, "Oh my God, it's actually gonna happen." I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because it was so. I said to my husband, like, "I think I'm actually going to go in Alvin. This is actually going to happen." And then that was 2017. In 2018, I was climbing into the submersible and going down in Alvin. So it took 13 years from the time I called Woods Hole, but I'll take it. I've now been down 3 times. I was just down last year. And it's just been like the privilege of my life to have that opportunity. So
That's awesome.
That's super cool. And you just even mentioned, I think what really helped you out was that you focused in on what you wanted to do. You kind of niched, what we like to say, we niched down. And being probably one of few, maybe a handful of artists who actually do this kind of work, it's easy for them to be like, all right, well, we just know Rebecca. Oh, we like how Rebecca does stuff, and maybe the only other person is like a Sven or whatever, or whatever. He's over in Germany, but hey, we want an American person. So it was like that helped you. You found what worked for you, and then everybody's like, oh, we want, and then.
And not only that, but you also did all your research. You were into biology, the science all behind it. So, and then you had already been advancing your craft as an artist as well with the acrylics and the sculptures and all. So then when that opportunity arose, you were prepared to jump at that opportunity then. You didn't have to be like, oh, well, wait a couple of years until I get this build up or anything. You were ready to go then at that point.
100%. And also something that you brought up before, it's also about chemistry, like the chemistry between people, and like, it's true. Like, people don't want to work with someone who's going to complain, or be a pain. And going out on a research vessel, like, it is not a cruise. They call them cruises. They are not luxury cruises. I mean, let me tell you, like, I can assure you, it is there are a lot of challenges, but like, I just got along really well with the people in this, this Ocean Memory Project. And then it sort of kind of, again, opened up other opportunities. And yeah, and I think you're right. Like, for me, I got really lucky because I discovered what my passion was, and it happens to be sort of a niche.
Yeah.
So that's been, really fortunate for me. And I do work in other areas as well, but yeah, it's been. I think as you get older, things kind of crystallize, and also I feel like in a lot of ways, I think that as you get older, what you used to maybe compartmentalize in your life all becomes kind of like connected. So like, I'll give you an example. For a long time, I would do graphic design on the side. I had a graphic design business to support myself, to supplement my fine art income. And I had learned how to do graphic design when I was in grad school. I interned for a studio, and so it was very lucrative, and it was a way for me to support myself. I paid off my student loans doing it. I bought my first couch. Like, it was like a real way for me to support myself, but also like I could make my own hours and still make my art. I always, in a way, kind of compartmentalize that part of myself, that the way that I could be savvy in, like, Adobe, Creative Suite, Adobe. Like, I was like, oh, I don't need that. That's just for my design. And then I realized later on that I could take those skills and use them to create work, as a tool to create my fine art work, And so I think that, like, I don't know. I think that there's something about sort of being open and willing to, like, sort of take the skills and the kind of the things that are happening in your life and figure out how you can, take advantage of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Makes total sense. A fascinating story. I mean, I love your history. I mean, this is great. I mean, I'm learning so much. I mean, you really just were just navigating, and you shot, you shoot. Basically, like we say, we shoot your shot, and you ask questions, and you were able to get around and such. So now, being as an artist, you have a lot of like public art and whatnot from like massive murals at AT&T and Temple, as well as sculpture installations in parks. I mean, how did you begin receiving invitations, to start doing those kind of projects?
Well, I want to mention one thing that's really important in terms of my whole trajectory, and that is that I developed a relationship with a gallery in Philadelphia, Bridget Mayer Gallery, back in 2001. And that has been really instrumental. And that relationship with Bridget, she almost acts, she's my gallery dealer, but she's also sort of like an agent.
Mm.
She helps me find projects. She manages those projects. Um, and so that relationship has been just really fundamental to all the public art that I've done, because there are a lot of moving parts with public art projects, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of, people involved in the creation of it. And so it becomes a lot more manageable having somebody that's got my back, and we're working together to do it. So she's been amazing, and that relationship has been amazing. And again, like, finding the right chemistry, like working with someone for, 23 years or 24 years, we've we've become very close, and it's just been an amazing kind of part of my development as an artist, and her development of her gallery and her advisory business. So I just wanted to put that out there. But the first project I got is funny. It was the summer of 2015, which was also the summer that I went out to sea for the first time. So that was a very, very busy time, and a time of growth and expansion, and a time where I really started collaborating with others. So in 2015, I was invited to do the Temple Skytrain project, which is 18 backlit sculptures on a parking garage at Temple University. And I'm trying to remember, that was a call for art. So there are calls for art all over the country, and there's something called Percent for Art. I don't know if you've heard of it, but essentially any new building that's being built, a lot of cities, including the city of Philadelphia, have what's called a Percent for Art, where if you spend $20 million on a building, I'm making this up, but then you have to spend 1% on a work of art for the building. And so through that, the city of Philadelphia was offering something because they had just built this parking garage. So um, I applied for that, and was selected through, like, there was first, semifinalists, and then you have to give a whole presentation, and then in person with your ideas and renderings and everything. And then I was ultimately selected. So I think one of the really important things as an artist is to start looking for opportunities. And it's hard, it's like that whole, which came first, the chicken or the egg. Like, how do you get an opportunity if you've never had one? But I think there are public art opportunities where you don't necessarily need to have experience, but they want to see what you might come up with. And so maybe you start off with something like that, or maybe you do a mural that's even a like a community-based mural that maybe you're not getting paid for, but you're doing it to create a portfolio piece. You know what I mean? Where you're working with other people. But yeah, that first project was sort of a springboard for many other projects, and working with someone like, a gallery dealer that helped me to sort of manage that project was really helpful, because we were working with architects and engineers and fabricators and lighting designers and Temple University, and then we had to work with Temple electricians, and to create, the electrical component. um, it's all unionized, so there's just a lot of moving parts and stakeholders. So
Now, that's the one I think I remember seeing where it's like it goes different colors too, right? Where
yep,
it's like, I think for the different sky colors you did or something
yep.
like that. I thought it was really, really pretty and all, like, and it's on the side of a garage. I think it makes it so much better because you go into Philly and you see all these different types of art pieces. It makes it a lot more inviting, I think, when you're going down there. And I even told Todd, I was like, man, I wish this was like in a smaller capacity because I was like, these are cool lights and all, like the design and everything and all.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a project that was sort of, in general, public art can humanize the built, environment, and especially in an urban area, it creates some humanity there. It
Mm.
also in this particular corner of campus, it was pretty dark. They wanted it to be kind of like a safer space, and so the lights were kind of purposeful. I also kind of talked to students who were, seeing like what to sort of as I was building my idea to sort of think about what they might want, and they were lamenting that there's so much light pollution in Philadelphia that they can't see stars, and so part of the piece actually like there were LED programmable lights. Each light is programmable, and so I worked with lighting designers to create this kind of twinkling star effect in the piece. So it kind of shifts from dusk till dawn with uh, sky tone variations, but then also there's this twinkling star effect. So, but yeah, it's I think it's meant to sort of inspire wonder and just kind of make that corner of campus a little bit more exciting. And in public art in general, the same thing with I'll mention the AT&T mural along the Schuylkill Banks Trail. Um, that piece also, so the building, the AT&T building, was this sort of like it was kind of an ominous, windowless monstrosity along the Schuylkill Banks Trail, and it predated the Schuylkill Banks Trail. So all of a sudden in 2004, I think that was the year they built this trail, and people are riding their bikes by this like big ominous building that has no windows, and so people are like, what is the deal with this building? And so finally in 2019, I was awarded the project in 2016. It took 3 years to actually get through all the red tape of a contract with a giant like AT&T. But we finally were able to move the project forward, and creating that mural was really an opportunity to completely change the dynamic of the experience of people passing by that area. And it's like it's an area. The piece is called Convergence because it's an area of convergence. There's the railroad. There's the South Street Bridge. Penn is on the other side of the river. There's the Schuylkill Expressway and the Schuylkill Banks Trail, and the boardwalk.
And then you said it took 3 years. I mean, it's safe to assume to be a sculptor or a fine artist, patience is probably one of your strongest virtues,
We
right?
always say it's a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, yeah, there are going to be people that like become art stars very quickly, but for the vast majority of people, it's my husband jokes it's like almost a war of attrition. If you keep going, like eventually, like if you're honest with and genuine with your pursuit, like you're going to make your work and you're going to find hopefully some level of success. But it is a marathon, and there are a lot of like ups and downs where I was awarded the project, we thought it was going to move forward, and then there was a crazy contract that we had to move through that was basically stripping all the rights of the artwork from the artist, and there were insurance issues with access to the building because it's in sort of like a gated area. There's equipment that's stored there that can't be accessed to the public, and so it was a real challenge. And I had to sort of the project got tabled, and I had to kind of just keep going with all the other kind of balls I had in the air, and that's sort of I think really important is that like if you're a writer, you got to write. Don't work on one thing. You got to work on a lot of things. You got to, you don't know not everything's going to drop, not everything's going to play out. But, so yeah, I just tried to stay positive. I had lots of other projects going on. And then, one day I got the email that we're moving forward with this. So there also had to be some funding that had to get put into place for it to happen as well. So yeah, patience. Yes. I mean, I'm in the middle of a lot of projects right now where I'm having to wait, and actually, just in terms of the climate that we're in, and with federal funding that's being cut, that's actually been really impacting my work because, as I mentioned, the National Science Foundation was a big funder of this sort of the expeditions, these research trips, and bringing artists on board, and so that's really at a standstill right now. So
Right.
I'm looking at other opportunities try to continue to do what I do.
Okay, and then you said something that really sparked my attention. It was the how, like a writer has to constantly work on like different projects and whatnot too, because like all different artists have and it's depending on like what your niche is too and whatnot. Because like for a writer, who's writing maybe for TV shows or for movies, you know, they have to or books. There you go, or writing a book. You know, you can be working on one book and then you hit writer's block, or maybe this project isn't going to go forward the way I wanted, so I'll pause on this one, shift to another book.
Exactly.
And then like even though
So true.
and then like photographers and videographers, I mean, thing for us is like we're looking for different types of projects. Or like me when I did more filmmaking and whatnot. Okay, well I'm working on this film project. Oh, I don't have funding. Okay, well let me just wait on this. I could try this other film project and everything. So it's that staying flexible. There you go. You know, pivoting with how everything is kind of flowing.
Yeah, and it's so true. I mean, like I'll work on multiple things at once, and if I'm stuck on one thing, I'll kind of move to the other thing. You know, I think like the biggest mistake is to just be kind of, you know, yeah, everybody has creative blocks, you know, but to sort of move through those blocks, you know, if you want to do this professionally full time, you're not always going to have the perfect, you know, environment for creativity. Like it's not always going to be where everything's aligned and you can just be creative. You know, I remember talking to someone who wrote for Netflix and was like, "Look, it's a job. Like it's a creative job, but like I got to write 8 hours a day. I got to move through the creative blocks, you know." And my son is interesting. My son is an aspiring writer, and he has an accountability sheet that he's created where he has to actually like legitimately put down when he's actually working on his writing, you know. And he's developed this for himself, you know, to sort of to keep himself in check, you know. And when one thing isn't working, he starts writing on something else, you know. And yeah, I think it's really important, you know.
One thing you said too, a little bit back about collaborating with the types of people you had to collaborate with to get these projects across. Because on another episode, we had talked about collaborations like within the same industry of like similar creatives, but you were collaborating with electricians and with other people. Because I'm assuming on the huge mural, the whole entire wall, you weren't painting all of that yourself, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, no, that was a whole team, and so that was through the Mural Arts program, and yeah, no, I worked with a team of people, and in fact, again, building those relationships with people. So one of the people, actually, several of the people that worked on that mural, I ended up working with them on other murals. I had them as part of my team because they were great to work with, and they were, you know, happy to have the work, and I was really appreciative of their, you know, their efforts, you know. So, you know, you have something good, then you want to work with those people again and you build those relationships. So yeah, and it's like a trust, and you know. But yeah, I mean, what I think has been interesting for me is working with, you know, all these different types of people together on a project, and then also working with scientists on very, very different projects. And now I'm also working with other artists on projects. So for instance, I was brought into a project by a performing arts a dance company called Nicole Canuso Dance. They're doing a project, and they got a grant through the Pew Fellowships to create a new piece, and it's going to be, I think, in 2026. But I was brought on to help with their kind of their backdrops for their performance, and I'm working with an animator, like a filmmaker, where they're going to be taking some of my imagery to create, you know, moving pictures that are going to be potentially projected on, like, you know, fabric that are going to be kind of moving in the space and flowing in the space where the dancers are. And so it's really fun to actually work, you know, collaboratively with other artists too, other creative people. I've worked with musicians on projects before. Yeah, it's been exciting. So.
And then what advice would you give for an aspiring fine artist, you know, when it comes to like networking and collaborating with other artists?
Collaborating with other artists, well, you have to put your ego at the door, or leave your ego at the door. You know, when you're working with other artists, you know, you're not the only creative person in the room, and so you really have to be open to their, you know, what they have to say. Like I've been doing an ongoing collaboration with a fiber artist, sculptor, who is now in California, and she and we do like a constant feedback, because we worked on a project together that was like a permanent piece at the Mississippi Aquarium. She and I have conceived of these sculptural pieces together, and so it's been a really cool back and forth. But like, you can't be, I think you can't be too bossy. You have to really be kind of open to other points of view, you know?
M-
And
mo-
it's a really different thing. I mean, it's different because it's it's really about like when you're collaborating, that's when I'm working and I'm making my own work in the studio and I'm working with my gallery, she's selling the work and I'm making a living with that. And so that's different. I am creating that work and it's sort of it's more of a kind of intuitive and kind of it's sort of like my I don't know how to put it, but it's like the most primal way I work is with painting. That's sort of like my first love, you know. When I'm doing big sculptures in a sculpture park or creating things that are going to be on permanent display that are being fabricated, there's a step of removal from it a little bit, and working with other people on those projects, I'm really kind of open to their inputs, you
Okay.
know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And then so that's talking about collaborating with other artists. And then you mentioned just a little briefly
Yeah.
about collaborating with like your you basically call her your agent, right?
I mean, Bridget she's my gallery dealer, and she works as my project manager agent, and she does help to find opportunities for me. And likewise, if I find opportunities, I bring them back, to her. So she sort of represents me,
And how would a artist find a person like that? You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's challenging. I think it's a lot easier now with social media because even like having websites and stuff like that. When I was first starting out, it was kind of new, even, and now like, you can gain exposure by being online in a way that you couldn't before. But it's not easy, I have to admit. Like it's not easy, but I think you can do research on galleries. You can send them emails. You can send them a PDF with like some of your like I sent you that PDF, with some of your best pieces. You can physically mail galleries. A lot of galleries will say that they're not taking submissions, but if you send to somebody a package, they're oftentimes going to open it, even if they say they're not taking submissions. So um, I think it's really important to just start researching the kind of galleries and the kind of stable of artists you are interested in showing with, and then reaching out to those galleries. Also, showing up, like showing up in person, like go to art openings, meet these people,
yeah.
like network. I mean, the networking thing is real. Like you're much more likely to have an opportunity if they get to know you. So think about like what openings you're going to go to. Go to museum show openings. Go to gallery openings.
Yeah, and that's super true because they're building a relation. I mean, obviously you're the artist and you're creating art, but at the end of the day, you are the business. You are the artist, and they want to build a relationship with you. And if you're a person that they're like, all right, yeah, you know what, I like Rebecca's vibe, we could work with her. Versus like her art's good, but I don't like her.
Yeah, and trust me, that I have seen it play out with a lot of people I know, with other galleries, where just because the art is one thing and the gallery is one thing. There are galleries that don't pay their artists, on time, or aren't easy to work with. You don't want to work with that gallery. It's the same thing. But yeah, I mean, you want to be an artist that's positive, that's producing work, that's it's like if you're going to be difficult, there are 100 people waiting in line behind you to take your spot. Like there are lots of artists out there that would kill to have that opportunity. So don't be difficult. Don't be difficult.
Yeah,
Be cool. Because
be cool, man.
I mean, seriously. And I will say that not every gallery is the right fit. Like I've worked with some galleries where it just the opportunities weren't happening. Like in other cities. And while there was no hard feelings, I didn't want to put my energy towards creating work for a show where it didn't feel like it was working. But I will say that I have been approached through Instagram. I've actually had, Instagram is not just for like the likes and like followers. It's nice to have a following, but I've actually had real opportunities happen on Instagram where I've done public art projects where they found me on Instagram. Like I did a project in the city of Alexandria where they contacted me through Instagram. I've been approached by galleries through Instagram. So, yeah, get yourself out there,
Yeah, if they can't see your stuff, they don't know you exist then, right?
Well, exactly. And I mean, like I said, now you have so much of an opportunity to get yourself out there in a way that didn't happen before. So take advantage of it, you know.
Yeah, true that. True that. I only have like one or two questions. You have any other questions, Naomi?
No, I've been enjoying hearing the whole story and all and everything, and I all the pictures you sent, Tato, I was looking at them and all, and like I loved them. Like the LED one's my
good.
favorite,
Oh,
and then the
nice.
one that you had in the park that showed like the mountains and all,
Mm.
like, and it was a shadow that came through. I thought that was really phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
that's actually like geologic mappings of the mountain. Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool because it's like I saw like when I saw the lines and everything, I was like it looked like a map like for there. So then when I saw the light come through in your other angle, I was like, oh snap!
Yeah, that was a fun project. And I will say that, you know, the other thing is about letting go of your ego. Like with that project, there was sort of it was supposed to be a much smaller thing, and it became something much bigger. And it was one of the first times it was actually the first time I did a freestanding sculpture. And so there was an opportunity to make it bigger. The budget, my artist fee wasn't getting bigger with it,
Mm.
but I sort of looked at it as, you know, there are times when you can like kind of double down and be like, nope, I got to get paid X.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are times when like you think, well, you know what, this is gonna lead to other projects, and this is a project that's gonna be, you know, this is gonna lead to other things, and I'm going to, you know, take this opportunity to create my portfolio and not worry about how much I'm making from this project, you know.
Yeah.
And it's led to other things that have been much more, you know, financially lucrative.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was exciting. I worked, and that was all in the pandemic, that piece. So that was
Oh, really?
really challenging to do. But yeah, we worked with 1.5-inch thick steel and plasma cut these forms out of it, which were basically the geologic map of the Appalachians as they course through Pennsylvania.
Ah.
And so these cutouts, I knew that light and shadow would play a part, but there was no way to know how amazing it would be until
until you
it was
put it up.
happening. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yeah, it's like a 70-foot long wall.
Sheesh.
And then the pieces that were cut out, they were massive because you think inch
Thick
and a half
steel,
thick steel,
yeah.
it's 9 feet by 70 feet. So the owners of the sculpture park actually commissioned me to do something with all the cutouts because we didn't want to throw them away. And so we ended up creating another piece on the property with the cutouts, and that was it ended up. I created this path in the woods with these cutouts that I can send you a picture of as well.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
But it was an interesting, like very kind of improvisational, spontaneous kind of approach that is very time based because we kind of planted moss in between the pieces, and so it's kind of changed over time. Versus the very, you know, the big iconic, you know, larger piece that went through like, you know, engineering and design and fabrication, and you know, was not as spontaneous. So
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's like you just said. You literally said, "All right, this could lead to more work." Bada boom, right there. It led to another project. May not as massive as the other one, but it still led to other stuff, just like that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, your story's been fantastic. I
Thank
mean, it's very
you.
inspiring, and I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of, you know, artists and, you know, up and coming artists and people who would probably want to learn more. Is there any way that people can like get in contact with you or maybe follow you online or anywhere?
Sure, that'd be great. I am on Instagram at Rebecca.Rutstein, Rutstein, and I have a website with my name, RebeccaRutstein.com. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's how we met.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to take those opportunities.
Exactly. So, well, it's been a great episode, Rebecca. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out and meet with us today. And, you know, if you want to learn more about our show, you can check us out at www.23journeyscreative.com. I am your host, Thato Datsun, with Naomi. Thank you, Rebecca. You all have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.